welcome. I am so delighted to be able to welcome my next interviewees, the wonderful director of the Mortuary Assistant, Jeremiah Kipp, and of course the original game developer as well with Brian. So thank you all so much for taking the time to talk with me everything about the Mortuary Assistant. I'm sure you're completely pressed out at the moment, seeing as the film's going to be releasing on Shudder very soon here in the UK. Um, I just wanted to first of all ask what can you tell us first of all, anyone who doesn't know anything about either the game or the film, what the basic premise is for the Mortuary Assistant?
I'd like Jeremiah did such a great job last time. I'd like to hear his explanation of it.
Okay. So Rebecca Owens has just completed her final interview of her internship at River Fields Mortuary. She's about to start the night shift for a night among the dead, embalming and cremation, pretty standard stuff. But as the night progresses, weird things are starting to happen that she's seeing out of the corner of her eye. And what she and the audience come to realize is that there are dark forces at work inside River Fields Mortuary, these demons that like bind themselves to her. And they speak in the language of depression and suicidal ideation and guilt and addiction, and once they've latched onto her, they're like killing her in her mind and killing her in her heart. And anybody who's played the game of the mortuary assistant knows for certain that there is no guarantee that you will survive the night. So we'll see.
Right.
So tune in to the mortuary assistant and see how Rebecca fares.
See, that was beautiful. That's why I couldn't just give my usual description of
That
my game, you know.
that was a wonderful summary. I have to say, I struggle. It was so obviously you've seen my review very recently, and Jeremiah, I've seen you've interacted with it, and I really appreciate the support on that. And I think that the I myself I'm a failed gamer. I used to game quite a lot. Final Fantasy VII was probably my era of
Hey, all
gaming.
right, yeah.
And so I had no experience other than seeing the promotion for the film about the game, and coming into it was a very different experience from what I'm seeing with a lot of reviews recently. How are you finding the feedback on the film and the experience on translating that? Because for me, watching it, I got the feel after seeing the streams on the game afterwards that you did a fantastic job of emulating the look and feel of the game into that kind of film landscape and kind of broadening that universe out. But without having that foresight going in, it was a very different experience. So, do you mind speaking to that a little bit?
Sure. Well, I can say that I'm a passionate enthusiast and a fan of the game. When approached initially, they didn't say it was the mortuary assistant. They said, "Would you like to adapt a video game?" And my
Mm,
first response to that was like, "Why would I want to do that? What incentive do I possibly have?" There's a long history of films that have unsuccessfully adapted video games because they don't understand them. It's
mm,
like when they did Super Mario Bros. It's like, "Hey, what if we make it like Blade Runner?" Which makes no sense whatsoever. But then when I
mm,
played the game, I was like, oh, this game is spectacular. There's
mm.
something so chilling about the game. It felt like a horror movie. You know the way that when you watch a film that's as beautifully minimalist as Halloween, and you love the character of Laurie Strode so much, and
Mm,
you fear for what's going to happen to her so much, and there's so much of there's a density in that movie where you feel like there's a lot going on. I felt that playing the game. I felt
mm,
like Brian had created these beautiful three-dimensional characters in a very austere, strange, unique setting. I think that working with the dead is like really an empathetic process ultimately.
mm,
It's so creepy at first and so disgusting, like touching and prodding and cutting into the dead. But then you come to realize that it's not the dead that you have to fear. It's like it's these forces outside of the dead. I mean, human beings are far more scary than
mhm,
anything that the dead have to offer. And the demons in Brian's game, they were so closely attuned to like voices that can destroy you in real life, I thought that was like there was a real key to that, and playing the game, I was like, there's a real movie here.
mhm,
I don't think I would want to adapt any video game. I wanted to adapt this one. I cared
mm.
very deeply about like representing it on screen, and it was very interesting watching Markiplier's Iron Lung because it was like I was like, oh, if you love the game and if you love Markiplier, You know, if you watch his YouTube channel and you see how passionate he is about playing the games, and then you plug him into the very engrossing story of Iron Lung, I was like, wow,
Mm,
this is a really compelling experience. And there's a whole
mm,
world of indie horror games that could make very interesting films. I thought The Mortuary Assistant was one of them. You know, so when you make a movie like this, you just do it wholeheartedly and sincerely, and you include the game's developer every step of the way because he is the source. I mean, he created this whole thing, you know. So then all you can do is put it out into the world very truthfully and very honestly and very openly and say, this is what we did, you know. But I
mm,
believed in it, you know. I believed in the project and I believed in Brian and I believe in our movie. You know, I felt like we handled it with great care and it belongs to the
mm.
audience now.
It definitely does. It definitely feels like a fan genre made film for fans of the game. And Brian, how did you feel about having your work adapted for the big screen?
Uh, well, I've said before that as an indie developer, so much of your work is just trying to keep living. Um, and it's extremely rare for an indie game to make enough money for you to live a month, let alone a year or whatever. So my focus was very much just I gotta get a game out that's gonna keep the lights on, right? And when I signed with Dread XP, who's company under Epic Pictures, there was a mention of like, hey, we think this would make a great movie. Would you be interested in that? And I was like, sure, yeah, whatever, tack it on the contract, that's fine. Because I was just trying to like get signed so that I could have some marketing support, right? The game was basically
Mm,
done. I just wanted to make sure that it did as well as it could so I could keep doing this. So at first it wasn't even a necessarily serious entertained thing, but as the game after it came out and was doing all right, the conversations came back up again, and then I was like, even then I was like, nah, that won't happen. That'd be really cool, but I don't think that would happen. And I said another interview that even when they were bringing the 2x4s in to where they were building the set, I was like, maybe not though. Maybe it still wouldn't
yeah,
work. Maybe they still
there's
won't
that
do it.
still that element of doubt creeping in, right?
Yeah, well, I think imposter syndrome runs rampant in the hearts of the creative, right? And
Mm,
so the whole experience was constant doubt until it suddenly wasn't anymore. So really, it was just a huge gift to me to be able to do
mm,
this because movies have always been a very influential part in the way that I do storytelling in games. The whole reason I got it, you mentioned Final Fantasy VII. That and another game, Metal Gear Solid, were ones that really showed me like how you can tell story in a game beyond just I can jump in on top of mushrooms and flatten
mm,
them, right? It's like beyond mechanics. There's a chance to tell a story and be almost like a movie. And it's really weird that I throughout my game development career, it's almost like I've been chasing this like it's like a movie. I could do something like a movie, I could keep trying to do movie things. And then finally I get to hear and I have this wonderful experience of making this movie. And I'm just like, oh, this is like making a movie. This is great. I like this too. Like it's all in the same realm. So yeah, for me, it's just been a surreal and amazing, beautiful experience that I would not trade for the world. It was fantastic.
and how did the two worlds blend together? Because obviously you're an independent game developer and Jeremiah an independent filmmaker. Did you find there was any kind of similarities, any crossovers, any experiences that one could bring to the other on set whilst developing this?
Well, for me and Jeremiah, instantly, like we clicked instantly, and I think we're cut from a bit of the same cloth, because I think we enjoy a lot of the same films, a lot of the same style of horror and storytelling and everything like that. So we hit it off right away. But I think as far as like what we could bring to each other, I mean, so much of it is just the creative side of things, the storytelling, creative solutions, problem solving. There's a lot of that on set and making a game. um
Mm,
and I think that, at least for me, my experience with trying to figure out, okay, how do I get the player from A to B and tell the story in the way that they're going to understand it and be invested in it, is very similar to how do we get the viewer from A to B and get them to understand the story that we're trying to tell them. And I think while I lacked the experience in the filmmaking side of things, I think there are experiences that I have had throughout my career in video games in AAA and throughout my time in indie that really lent to that experience. And I think more than anything, just being available to say, yeah, that's something Raymond would say or do or whatever, right? Like that stuff is important too. And so I think that's at least my experience, is that they're very complementary. They're very similar in creative veins, while they are very different demands in terms of like team size and the things that you do. But I think at their core, creatively, they're very similar.
Yeah, working with Brian, through every stage of the process, from pre-production to principal photography, all the way through to post to right now, talking to you, it feels like we've had a continual dialogue that hasn't ended, you know. So in the script stage, we always wanted to make sure that, like, if we were adding a new scene, such as the one where Rebecca goes to Narcotics Anonymous, that it was truthful to the world that Brian had created. You know,
Mm,
if a scene like that is not in the game, but it could be,
no.
it could be a cut scene from the game because it just feels true to the character of Rebecca Owens that Brian created, and we didn't want to do anything that was going to be contrary to
Mhm.
what Brian had made in the first place. Now, having Brian on set was a really remarkable experience. At first, he's a creative and he's very respectful of other creatives. So at first he was like, "I'll be back by the monitor in the other room, you know, let me know if you need anything. I'll pop my head out every now and then to make a suggestion." But over time, like probably midway through the shoot, like Brian and I were shoulder to shoulder standing by the monitor right behind the camera, like
Fantastic.
say, speaking to each other and saying like,
Mm,
"Hey, wouldn't it be cool if dot dot dot," and incorporating those things in. So Brian was a true partner, and this is to take nothing away from the screenplay by Tracy Beebe, who
Mhm.
created a very strong piece of architecture with a through line for Rebecca Owens' character. But having Brian there as co-screenwriter allowed us to go back into what I called the well, drawing water from the well.
mm,
Brian was right there, and he knew what the game sounded like. He knew what the characters felt like. He knew what their rich backstories are. So he was available to us every day, right there on set making the movie with us as a resource because nobody understands the world of the mortuary assistant better than Brian does. Paul Sparks would constantly be pulling Brian over to one side, asking questions about not just Raymond in the given circumstance, but about Raymond's mother. About
Mhm.
how long Raymond has been at this mortuary, questions
yeah.
about like where he came from before. This is,
Mm,
this is very useful, and I think that it would be a mistake to not include the game developer when doing the game to film adaptation, because, there's a translation from game to screen that like it's essential for Brian to be a part of. And even when we had to translate an element of the game, like the checklist of the embalming process,
yeah.
that in the game exists in real time. Now,
Mhm.
how do you translate that into a movie? Well, we were like, okay, well, in scene one, we're going to do extreme close-ups of the constitutive elements of embalming.
Yes.
Like we even got a medical lens called the probe lens that like the doctors use
See
to
that.
like to
Yeah.
film, to film the incisions. It was very important that we let our special effects artist know. He's like, if you're going to get that close, that medically close to a wound, then I need to see
Mm.
photographs of the actors to match their skin tones and their pigments. Indeed, Brian played a dead body in the movie, which is
Oh,
an Easter
oh
egg
my
to the
goodness.
game. He actually is one of the dead bodies in the game too, you know.
Yeah.
But it's like this is the thing, it's like you just want it to stay hardwired into what the thing is really about, And
Mm,
Brian and I had all those wonderful conversations, not just about what makes it scary, but what are the underpinnings of the movie? What's the architecture of the characters? What are the themes, the underlying themes of the story? I think that Brian and I were able to connect on every level and translate that from a game, which is a playable experience, into a movie, which is an experiential experience for the viewer, where they emotionally attach themselves to the main character. In that sense, horror games and horror films are very empathetic because the
mm,
player or the viewer it gets deeply involved in the story of Rebecca
Mhm.
Owens, and when working well, the audience is gasping or screaming, or saying, "Rebecca, don't go in there," It's a,
That's the
it's
reaction you want, especially in a movie going audience. You
That's right.
want that kind of edge of your seat and that real interaction. And you mentioned about the probe lens and keeping that side of things as close to reality as possible. I also read somewhere you had a real mortician on set. Was that true? And how did that play out?
We didn't have a mortician on set, but I did speak to several morticians during pre-production, and I would go over scenes with them, and I would describe to them how we were handling the special effects. So, and
Mm,
and they were very canny. I mean, they understood that like this was a movie, so like we were going to need to translate that into a cinematic form in some ways. But like
mm,
they were also like very open to talking about the process of mortuary science and saying like, yes, Brian's game is actually medically accurate. It's it's like it might not be up to the minute in terms of the technology, but like Brian was always going for the effect that it would have on the player or the viewer, where it's like the tools of the trade might be from the 1990s, but they do the same thing that like modern morticians apply today. But no, I mean, a lot of morticians have written to me after the film has come out. They're like, "We saw your film and we approve," which is
wow.
very moving.
That's best you can ask for, really. You've got the game developer on side and you've got the morticians in the business saying it's great, then that's wonderful. And how did you find like the world building? As you mentioned earlier, you expanded kind of obviously a lot of the key characters, taking those characters outside of the mortuary. How was that as an experience?
Well, for me, it was definitely like I appreciated Jeremiah's approach from the very beginning. He knew that we couldn't add things that would feel out of place or feel like we were
Mm,
over defining something or feel like, okay, do we need to be showing every single thing that we did that was in addition uh to the game felt like a natural, like he was saying before, like it feels like it could be a cutscene in the game, the Narcotics Anonymous scene, right? But
mm,
there are other things as well that happen in the film that I don't feel any of it is out of place. I don't feel like
mm,
any of it is, well, they just put that in there just to have that or something, right? Like it feels like a natural addition to the game. And I think that's
mm,
an important line to walk, is we're doing the things that you would see in the game, the things that the that players want to see, but the new things you see feel like they belong, right? And I really appreciated that mindset, that approach. I felt like that was the right thing, right? We never went too far off the reservation for what was acceptable to put on screen. Everything felt like it belonged. And so I mean it was an easy process for me because there was nothing where I was like, I don't know. It all felt right.
fantastic. And then just looking a little bit past this, obviously it's coming out onto Shudder here in the UK on the 26th of March. And ahead of that, tomorrow you have a very exciting screening, I believe, in
Oh,
Connecticut. Can you tell us a
yes.
little bit about that? Because I
uh
saw it online and instant envy. As a horror fan,
oh
you
man,
want that immersive
I can
experience.
I can tell you all about that. I've been the
Please.
one organizing it. So originally, a limited release for the film, and it actually wasn't showing anywhere in Connecticut, which is where I live.
Mm,
So I was like, all right, fine, I'll do it myself, basically. And I got in
love
touch.
that.
I got in touch with this wonderful guy who runs this group called Milford Horror locally here in Milford, Connecticut. And I said, hey, would you like to do an advanced screening of this movie before it goes to Shudder? And he was all about it. And he said he's been wanting an excuse to go to this funeral home, but he's never had a connection. He had a friend of a friend through this church where he had done a screening of The Exorcist before. He does these themed events like this. And unfortunately his connection at the funeral home like stopped responding. And I said, well, I have no local reputation to protect. I can be as annoying as I want with these people. So I started
Love that.
contacting everybody I could. I went down the roster at the funeral home, and eventually they responded, and they were super enthusiastic about it. So yeah, tomorrow we're doing this screening of the movie where it's in their larger viewing room, It was a surreal experience. I met the guy who does all the organizing for Milford Horror, and we were measuring the room for the screen and where the speakers were going to go and stuff, all while this dead lady was in the corner. So that was very,
Oh my God,
yeah,
no.
we
Oh,
we
wow.
got there, and the one of the morticians, one of the funeral directors, met us and was like, so I just want you to know there's someone in the other room, but you know, and I thought immediately, oh, there's someone in there grieving, we're gonna have to be quiet and respectful while they're, you know, dealing with their thing. And she's like, but she's all done up and her nails are just drying and that's it. And I was like, oh, okay. There's a dead lady in there.
Wow.
We go in there, it's open casket. And so she's just laying
Oh
there.
my goodness
Well,
me.
we're going there. Oh yeah, there's a lot of chairs in here. It's gonna be great. This is gonna fit everybody. So it's like we're just, you
Oh
know,
goodness.
this really weird mix of like excitement, but also wanting to be respectful, and
Mhm.
you know, it's great, gonna be a great experience though. So we're gonna have a casket next to, I think I'm going to bring some, I've been lucky enough, I snuck away with some props from the movie, so I'm going to maybe put some of those out as well. You know, and we got I designed these prayer cards they're going to print that are just for that event, that are Mortuary Assistant themed, and have a quote from the Book of Typhon in the game on the back. So one of the cool keepsake for people. It's going to be a really, really fun time. Jeremiah's coming. I'm very excited for that. Any excuse to hang out with Jeremiah, I'm absolutely down for. So I think it's just going to be a fun night overall. So you're right to be envious.
Yeah.
I'm so envious. We never get anything like that here in the UK because we've just seen the Ready or Not exclusive screening. I think that was the last night or the night before, and everyone got caked in fake blood. And I was like, where is that for us? Maybe one day we'll have something over here on British shores. That would be lovely.
Yeah,
And
we'll
then,
also be joined by John Adams, who plays Rebecca's
Yes.
father in the movie. John
oh,
Adams, of course, is a Shudder legend because Hellbender and Mother of Flies and so many of the great Adams Family films are available on Shudder as well. So definitely check those movies out and then watch
Mm-hmm.
Mortuary Assistant to see him playing Rebecca's dad. John Adams is the father in the Adams Family, a family of filmmakers. And I always like to say that if Tom Hanks is America's dad, then John Adams is surely horror's dad.
Yeah, I'd agree. I love
I
John
think
Adams.
it's
It's
very
great.
close between him and Bill Moseley for me because I'm a massive fan of the Adams family myself.
Brilliant.
And bless her, Toby follows me. So love you guys, and Zelda, of course, we love you all. And Hellbent are fantastic. I'm a
Oh,
big
I
fan of
love
everything
Hellbender.
they do. So they're wonderful people. And then I just had a couple of other questions. So obviously, this is a very exciting time with the Mortuary Assistant coming out at the moment. Have you got anything else bubbling under the surface? What's next projects? Brian, I notice you're potentially adapting another horror franchise, I hear.
Oh, not
Could be
potentially. I'm
exciting.
very much knee deep in it. So I'm
I'm so
yeah,
excited because I'm
I'm
a
doing
found
a
footage fiend and I know what you're doing and I'm bubbling.
yeah, I'm doing a paranormal activity. So it's not an adaptation. It's
Hmm.
and I honestly think I would struggle to try and turn one of the films into a game. It's
Yeah.
there's, as much as I love those films and they're hugely influential in my style of horror, there's not a lot there to make a game with a lot of content. And that's the
Mhm.
challenge. So I'm taking the same approach that I did for Mortuary Assistant. I'm doing it by myself.
Mhm.
Other room on the side of this wall. I got a motion capture suit and setup. I'm doing all the animation and art and coding and everything myself, just like I usually do. And I'm trying to build a lot of character driven stuff to kind of drive the story through the experience. I'm definitely excited for it. It's definitely got a lot of new challenges. Kind of going back to, it's like a mix of my time at AAA and
Mm.
working in indie, you know. But to Paramount's credit, they have been very open to all the weird ideas that I've had. The only real challenge is that I like to do a lot of weird out there stuff, and my brain will come up with crazy things, and I'll be like, I want to make a game about that or something. And I'm like, I can't do that for this because it won't fit in the universe, right? So I'm definitely trying to work within a box, but you can come up with a lot of interesting things when you have certain restrictions. So I'm excited for it. I'm actually showing it at Penny Arcade Expo in Boston next weekend for the first time. So that's been, you know, high stress getting the bugs fixed. I actually just pushed a build like a few minutes before coming back for interviews. But it is what it is. That's game development. And beyond that, I think this experience working on this film has really reminded me of that, as I mentioned before, that early love of film. And I would love to explore what other things I can do outside of just video games. Like, I think the core thing that I have learned about me, Brian, the creative person, not just the game developer, is that I just like telling stories. And if I can do that in the way we did for Mortuary Assistant, where we've got tons of awesome people working together passionately to just have fun making something weird, I would love to be a part of it. So that's where I would like to go, is see what the options are as Paranormal Activity kind of hits its stride and the dust settles a bit and goes more towards ship. I think I'm going to start exploring more of that.
Wonderful. And for yourself, Jeremiah?
Yes, after we completed The Mortuary Assistant, I made a film in the Cambodian jungle, and it immediately made me sympathetic to any filmmaker who has set foot on a jungle path. In the tradition of like Oliver Stone and John McTiernan and Francis Ford Coppola, once they go to the jungle, they never go back because the jungle is a hellish nightmare zone. But what better place to put a monster? So that film is
Oh, a
coming out.
monster feature. I'm excited. That's going to be
Yes.
cool. Okay. Oh, I'm going to keep an eye out for that. And then I have one final question very quickly, because I know we've got a hard finish. Mortuary Assistant, if you're going to screen it in a double feature, what would be your second film of choice to pair it with? It could be a thematic choice or something you're really passionate about that you'd love to see it paired with.
I'll go for another story of a woman unraveling. I'll go with a British film. Prano Bailey Bond made an extraordinary film called Censor. So if you took that film and played it side by side with The Mortuary Assistant, it would be two tales of like of a doomed female protagonist unraveling.
Oh, I love a good unraveling. That's cool. Okay. And for yourself, Brian?
Uh, I think I actually would like to see it with I was gonna say Paranormal Activity, but I feel like that's a cop out. I would see it with The Thing, honestly, because
Oh, okay.
I think some of the I think actually a lot of like the cinematography reminds me of various aspects of it. The mood reminds me of various aspects of it, and I think just the way the horror is set up, I think they would complement each other well. I think Jeremiah has done a very good job of we always talk about how much we love John Carpenter films, and I think it would be a great pairing for it. It's like wines. It's like we're talking about a wine flight or something here, but yeah, I think
Yeah.
it would be good in good company and just fun to see them both.
I think saying that now, I'm thinking of a three-courser. I can't imagine pairing one over the other. So we just do it and put the mortuary assistant in the middle, and let's see how it rolls.
That would be a dream come true.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, thank you both so much. Wishing you all the best for the event tomorrow. I can't wait to
Thank
see
you.
all the images and everything that come out of it, and of course for the release on Shudder. Thank you both for taking the time. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you.